In the quiet village of Tambura, the air always smelled of earth and rain. The people there lived simple lives, and among them was a woman named Amina. She was known for her soft hands and kind heart. People came from faraway places to seek her help because her herbs could ease pain and her words could calm troubled hearts. Amina's husband, Kato, was a hunter. He was strong, tall, and gentle in spirit. When he walked through the village, children ran after him, calling his name. He often carried gifts of meat or wild fruit for the elders, and everyone admired how he treated Amina with love and respect. Together they seemed to have everything a couple could wish for, except one thing: a child. For many years they prayed and hoped. Amina would visit the river each morning, pouring milk into the water as an offering to the spirits. "Please bless us with a child," she would whisper. Kato never complained, but sometimes Amina saw the sadness in his eyes when he watched fathers playing with their children. At night she would touch his hand and say, "Maybe next season, my love." He would smile weakly and nod. The villagers often talked behind her back. Some said she was cursed. Others said the gods had closed her womb. But Amina never answered them. She continued her healing work and smiled at everyone no matter what they said. Her heart was strong, though it carried deep pain. One evening, as the sun melted behind the hills, Amina sat outside her hut. The air was still and the sky glowed red. Kato had gone hunting and had not returned. She watched the forest path, waiting for him. When darkness came, she lit a small oil lamp and whispered a prayer for his safety. That night, she fell asleep with the lamp still burning beside her. In her dream, she found herself in a strange place. The air was thick with mist, and a tall old woman stood before her. The woman's hair was silver like moonlight, and her eyes glowed softly. "Amina of Tambura," the woman said in a calm voice. "You have a pure heart. You heal others but carry pain inside yourself." Amina bowed her head. "Who are you, mother?" she asked. "I am the keeper of life," the woman said. "I have come to tell you that a day will soon come when the one you love most will stand at the edge of death. Only you can save him." Amina's eyes widened in fear. "Kato? What must I do?" The woman stepped closer. "To save the one you love, you must give what you cherish most." Amina frowned. "What do I cherish most?" The woman smiled sadly. "Your heart will know when the time comes." Before Amina could ask more, the mist swirled around her and she woke up. The lamp had burned out and dawn light touched her face. Her heart raced as she looked around the hut. Kato was still not back. She ran to the edge of the forest, calling his name. Soon she saw him walking toward her with a wide grin. "The hunt was good," he said, showing her 2 wild rabbits. Amina ran to him and hugged him tightly, relief flooding her eyes. He laughed softly. "Why do you hold me like that, my wife?" "I'm fine." She didn't tell him about the dream. She only smiled and said, "I missed you." Days passed, but Amina could not forget the dream. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. Each night she sat by the fire, staring into the flames, wondering what it meant. One afternoon, while she was mixing herbs for a sick child, the same old woman appeared again, not in a dream this time but in a shimmer of light near her doorway. Amina froze in fear. The woman spoke softly, "Do not be afraid, child. The time draws near. Be strong." Then she vanished like smoke. Amina dropped the bowl in her hands. Her heart pounded so fast she could barely breathe. She didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? That night, Amina and Kato ate dinner together. The air outside was calm, but something in her heart felt heavy. Kato noticed her silence. "Are you unwell?" he asked. She forced a smile. "I am fine, my love." He nodded and reached for her hand. "You worry too much. The gods will bless us in their own time." She nodded, but tears filled her eyes. She wished she could tell him what she feared, that something terrible was coming. But she stayed silent. As the moon climbed higher, Amina stepped outside their hut. The night air was cool and smelled of damp leaves. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "If I must give something, please let it not be him. Take anything but not Kato." A gentle wind brushed her cheek, like a hand in comfort. She felt tears slip down her face. In the days that followed, life went on as usual. Kato went hunting. Amina tended to the sick. But a shadow of worry followed her everywhere. She began to notice small things: how Kato coughed at night, how he walked slower than before, how his laughter seemed a little weaker. Sometimes she caught herself staring at him, memorizing his smile, the lines near his eyes, the way he looked at her when he teased her for burning the stew. She tried to store every moment deep inside her heart, as if some part of her knew that time was running short. Then one evening Kato said, Tomorrow I'll go deeper into the forest. I saw signs of a large deer near the river. If I can catch it, we'll have meat for weeks. Amina felt fear rise inside her, but she said nothing. She knew she could not stop him. She only nodded and said softly, "Be careful." That night, she lay awake beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. The moonlight fell on his face and she felt her heart ache with love and worry. The seer's words returned, "To save the one you love, you must give what you cherish most." She did not yet know what that would mean, but she knew one thing with certainty. If Cato's life ever hung in danger, she would do anything, give anything to save him. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and fate. And somewhere deep within Amina's heart, a quiet knowing began to grow, that her love would soon be tested in a way no woman should ever face. The morning sun had barely touched the tops of the palm trees when Cato left home with his hunting spear. Amina stood at the doorway watching him disappear into the forest. She waved, smiling, though her heart felt heavy. The dream still haunted her, the warning from the old seer about giving what she cherished most. She prayed it would never come true. Hours passed and the day grew hotter. Amina worked in her garden, picking herbs for medicine. But when the shadows grew long, she began to worry. Cato was never this late. Usually by sunset, he would return with his laughter and the smell of forest leaves on his clothes. As darkness fell, a cry came from the edge of the forest. A group of men were running toward the village, shouting for help. Amina dropped her basket and ran to meet them. When she saw what they carried, her heart froze. It was Cato. His skin was pale, his breathing weak, and his legs swollen and purple. "He was bitten by a snake," one man said. "A black viper." Amina knelt beside him, trembling. "Cato, can you hear me?" He opened his eyes for a moment and whispered her name before slipping into unconsciousness. Tears streamed down her face. The villagers helped her carry him into their hut and laid him on the mat. Amina rushed to her shelves, mixing herbs with shaking hands. She crushed roots, boiled leaves, and whispered prayers as she worked. But no matter what she did, Cato's breathing grew slower. The poison had spread too deep. She called out to the heavens, her voice breaking. "Please, do not take him from me." But the only answer was silence, heavy and cold. Then Amina remembered the old seer's warning. Her heart pounded. To save the one you love, you must give what you cherish most. She knew what it meant now. It was her womb, her hope of motherhood, the one thing she had prayed for all her life. For a moment she hesitated. The thought of never holding her own child brought pain sharper than a knife. But when she looked at Cato's still face, she knew her choice. She loved him more than life itself. Without wasting a second, she ran out into the night, her bare feet striking the earth. The moon was high, lighting the path to the edge of the forest. There stood a small shrine of stones, where the priestess Mama Lela lived. Amina had gone there once as a child, but never since. She reached the hut, breathless, and knocked hard on the wooden door. "Mama Lela, please open." The door creaked open and an old woman stepped out, her eyes glowing like embers. "I knew you would come, child," she said softly. "The spirits spoke of your pain." Amina fell to her knees. "Please, Mama Lela, my husband is dying. The snake's poison is killing him. Save him, I beg you." Mama Lela looked at her kindly but with sadness. "You already know what must be done." Amina's voice shook. "Please tell me there is another way." The old priestess sighed and shook her head. "Life must be traded for life, my daughter. The gods do not give freely. To bring him back, you must give the womb that brings life." Amina covered her face with her hands and wept. Her body trembled and her heart screamed against the truth. "But that means, I will never have children." Mama Lela's voice was calm but firm. "Yes, but he will live. You must choose, love that lives or love that dies." Amina raised her tear-streaked face. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then take it. Take whatever you must. Just let him live." Mama Lela nodded slowly. She helped Amina inside the shrine. The air was thick with the smell of burning herbs and strange flowers. Candles flickered around them. The old woman began to chant in a deep, rhythmic voice. Amina knelt in the center of a circle drawn in white powder. Her hands clutched her chest, her eyes closed tight. She felt warmth spread through her body, first gentle, then fierce, like fire and lightning at once. Her breath caught. Her body shook. She cried out, but her voice was lost in the sound of the chanting. The flames around her danced higher, and a golden light filled the room. Then suddenly all went silent. Amina opened her eyes. The air was still. Mama Lela stood beside her, her face wet with sweat and tears. "It is done," she said softly. The gods have taken your gift. Go home now. Your husband waits for you. Amina felt weak, but a strange calm settled over her. She stood, her steps unsteady, and walked back through the forest. The night birds sang softly as if guiding her home. When she entered her hut, Cato was breathing again. His color had returned and the swelling on his leg was fading. The villagers were amazed. "It is a miracle," they whispered. But Amina knew it was not a miracle. It was a sacrifice. She sat beside him all night, holding his hand. When he finally woke, he smiled weakly. "You saved me, my love," he whispered. Amina smiled back through tears. "You came back to me, Cato. That is enough." He didn't notice the pain in her eyes or the deep emptiness inside her. She told no one what had happened, not even him. The next morning, the sun rose bright and golden. The birds sang again and the village buzzed with joy. Cato walked slowly outside, leaning on a stick, greeting everyone who had come to see him. They all praised Amina for her skill as a healer. But Amina stayed inside, her hands resting gently on her stomach. She felt no movement there, no warmth, no life. It was as if the wind had carried something away forever. Still, she smiled when she looked at Cato. He was alive, and that was all that mattered. That night, when he fell asleep beside her, she whispered to the darkness, "Thank you, gods, for giving him back to me. I will carry this loss quietly as my gift to love." Outside, the moon glowed softly over the village, and the wind whispered through the trees, a song only Amina could understand. The sun rose over the hills of Tambura, painting the sky gold and orange. Amina stood outside her hut, watching the morning light touch the roofs of the village. Birds sang from the trees, and children ran down the dusty path, laughing. Everything seemed peaceful, yet inside Amina's heart was a silence that never left her. Cato was strong again. His smile had returned, and so had his laughter. The poison that once nearly took his life was gone, as if it had never touched him. The people called it a miracle. They said Amina's healing hands had brought him back from death. Cato believed that too. He would tell everyone who came to visit, "My wife is blessed by the gods. Her touch brings life." Each time he said it, Amina only smiled and bowed her head. She never told him the truth, that her womb had been taken in exchange for his life. It was a truth she buried deep, hidden under her love for him. Life slowly returned to normal. Cato went back to hunting, and Amina returned to caring for the sick and the old. The villagers came to her daily, for medicine, advice, or a kind word. But behind their smiles she often heard whispers. "She is a healer, yes," some said, "but why can she not heal herself? Why has she not given Cato a child? She is cursed," others murmured. "Her womb is dry like the desert." Amina heard every word, but she never answered. She only smiled softly and kept working. When people brought her fruits or firewood as thanks, she thanked them kindly. When they spoke cruel words, she blessed them anyway. Her silence was her shield, and her peace was her pride. At night, when Cato returned from the forest, they would sit together by the fire. He often spoke of the future, of building a bigger house, of teaching their sons to hunt and their daughters to plant. His voice carried hope, but each word cut into Amina's heart like a sharp blade. She would smile and listen, nodding at his dreams. But when he fell asleep, she would turn away and let silent tears fall. She had no words to tell him the truth. She could not bear to see sorrow in his eyes, or worse, pity. One evening, after a long day in the forest, Cato came home carrying a small wooden carving. It was shaped like a cradle. He handed it to her, smiling. "For our first child," he said. Amina's heart sank. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood, feeling the warmth of his love. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I made it for you," Cato said proudly. "When the time comes, our baby will sleep in it." Amina nodded and placed the carving carefully on a shelf. She turned away so he would not see her eyes. That night, when he slept, she touched the carving again and whispered, "Forgive me." Days turned into months. Each morning she woke early, prayed by the river, and went about her work. She healed the wounds of others, even as her own heart carried invisible scars. She often saw mothers walking with their babies tied to their backs, humming lullabies. Each time her chest ached, but she never let envy take root. Instead, she smiled and helped them with their herbs or their cooking. Sometimes, when the village women gathered to talk, they spoke of her. "Amina is kind," one would say. "But the gods have not blessed her womb. Maybe she did something wrong in her past life," another would whisper. Amina would hear them and continue her work as if nothing had been said. Her faith was strong and she believed that one day the truth, her truth, would be known. But she did not hurry it. She left everything to the hands of the gods. One afternoon an old woman came to her door. It was Mama Lela the priestess. Her back was bent, but her eyes still glowed with wisdom. Amina quickly helped her inside and offered her water. Mama Lela looked at her for a long time before speaking. "You carry your silence well," she said softly. Amina lowered her eyes. "Some truths must stay quiet, Mama." The old woman nodded slowly. "Yes. But silence is heavy, child. It can crush a heart if carried too long." Amina said nothing. She looked down at her hands, calloused from years of work. Mama Lela placed a hand on her shoulder. "The gods saw your sacrifice. They will reward your heart in ways you do not yet understand." Tears filled Amina's eyes. "I do not seek reward, Mama. I only ask that Cato live a long life. That is enough for me." The old woman smiled gently. "Then your soul is already richer than gold." She stood up to leave but paused at the door. "Remember this, Amina, the truth has a way of finding its voice even when you try to bury it." Amina nodded, though her heart trembled. That night she sat outside with Cato. The stars shone bright above them and the crickets sang softly. Cato spoke about how grateful he was to be alive. "You saved me," he said. "Every day I wake and thank the gods for you." Amina smiled faintly. "Then thank them twice," she said softly. Cato laughed, not understanding her words, and pulled her close. "You are my miracle," he said. As he held her, Amina looked at the sky, her eyes shining with quiet sorrow. The stars seemed to listen, their light gentle on her face. She whispered a prayer in her heart, not for herself but for strength to keep living with her secret. In the months that followed, Amina poured all her love into helping others. She cared for sick children, guided young wives, and comforted women in labor. When babies were born, she smiled and held them, though her heart broke a little each time. She never spoke of her loss. She never let her sorrow show. To the world she was just Amina the healer, calm, wise, and kind. But deep within her, a quiet ache lived on, a reminder of what she had given up for love. Still, she never regretted it. Every time Cato's laughter filled their home, every time he came back safely from the forest, she felt peace. Her sacrifice was her secret, and her silence was her song. The years rolled by like slow-moving clouds over the village of Tambura. The days were calm, but inside Amina's heart, there was a quiet storm. She and Cato had grown older, yet their home remained silent. No child's laughter, no tiny feet running across the floor. At first, Cato tried to hide his sadness. He still smiled, still hunted, and still brought her small gifts from the forest. A bird feather, a rare flower, a carved stone. But Amina could feel the distance growing between them. When he looked at her now, there was a question in his eyes, one she could not answer. Each evening they sat by the fire. Amina would cook his favorite stew and they would eat in silence. Sometimes he would sigh deeply, his eyes fixed on the dancing flames. "Maybe the gods have turned from us," he would say. Amina always smiled softly. "Maybe they are still watching, my love." Just in silence. But in her heart she knew the truth. The gods had not turned away. They had simply taken what she had freely given. Her womb, her dream of motherhood, in exchange for his life. As the years passed, the whispers in the village grew louder. The women spoke behind her back when they fetched water from the river. "Poor Cato," they said. "He has no heir." "It is because of her," another added. "She is cursed. Her womb is as empty as a dry pot." Amina heard their words but never answered. She had learned long ago that silence was stronger than anger. But even silence has its weight, and it began to press on her heart. Cato too heard the whispers. At first he ignored them, but slowly they began to settle in his mind like dust. When his friends spoke about their children, pride shining in their eyes, Cato would smile on the outside but ache inside. One evening he came home from the forest later than usual. His face was tired and his eyes avoided hers. Amina could feel something heavy in the air. She served him food but he barely ate. The crackling of the fire was the only sound between them. After a long silence he finally spoke, his voice low and troubled. "Amina," he said, "I have thought about something for many nights." She looked at him quietly. "What is it, my husband?" He swallowed hard. "I'm not a young man anymore. My hair grows gray and my hands are slower. When I die, who will carry my name? Who will take care of you? The people say, they say I should take another wife." Amina's hands froze. The room seemed to grow still. Cato looked at her with guilt in his eyes. "You are my heart, Amina. You are everything good in my life. But I cannot silence the voice inside me that longs for a child." Amina felt tears rise but she blinked them away. Her lips trembled but her voice was calm. Do what your heart needs, Cato. He looked at her with pain. You would allow it? She nodded slowly. If it brings you peace, then yes. He reached for her hand but she gently pulled away. You have given me love, Amina, he said. And for that I will always be grateful. She forced a small smile. Then let us not speak of sorrow tonight. That night Amina could not sleep. She lay on the mat, listening to the wind outside and the distant hoot of an owl. Her heart felt heavy, but her tears refused to fall. She turned to look at Cato, who slept soundly beside her. She whispered softly, If only you knew, my love. If only you knew what I gave for you. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, Amina rose quietly and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. She walked through the misty path leading to the forest. The air was cool and dew clung to her feet. She walked until she reached the small shrine where Mama Lela lived. The old priestess was sitting outside, feeding a fire. When she saw Amina, she nodded gently. The burden grows heavier, doesn't it, child? Amina knelt beside her. He wants another wife, Mama? Mama Lela sighed. I knew this day would come. Amina's voice broke. I let him. I told him to do what his heart wants. The priestess stirred the fire with a stick. Sparks rose into the air like tiny stars. You have a heart made of water, she said softly. You bend, you flow, but you do not break. Amina wiped her tears. It still hurts, Mama. I watch him drift farther from me each day. Sometimes I wish I could tell him the truth, that he lives because I gave everything. But something inside me stops the words. Mama Lela looked at her with kind eyes. You kept your silence to protect him, and that is love. But remember, every secret has its season. Yours will soon find its light. Amina looked into the fire, watching the flames twist and glow. When, Mama? She asked quietly. When the gods decide, the old woman said. Until then, keep your faith. Love does not vanish even when it is unspoken. Amina sat there for a long time listening to the fire crackle. When she rose to leave, Mama Lela handed her a small pouch of herbs. For strength, she said. And for peace. Back home, the village was already awake. Children played near the well and women prepared food. Cato stood outside their hut, talking with two elders. When he saw Amina, he smiled faintly but did not come to her. She felt the distance between them like an invisible wall. That evening, when the stars filled the sky, Cato told her he would visit another village in a few days, the one where his cousin lived, the same cousin who had promised to help him find a second wife. Amina nodded. I will prepare food for your journey. He looked at her for a long time, his eyes soft with guilt. You are too kind to me, Amina. She smiled faintly. Kindness is the only thing I have left to give. When he left the next morning, Amina stood at the doorway, watching him disappear down the path, just as she had many years ago. But this time her heart did not race with fear. It simply ached with quiet acceptance. She turned back to the small wooden carving on the shelf, the cradle Cato had made long ago. She picked it up and held it close to her chest. You will never hold a child, she whispered to herself, but you held a life. You gave love where others would have given up. That night, she sat by the fire, the orange light flickering on her face. The air outside was still and the world felt both heavy and calm. She whispered a prayer to the gods, her voice soft but steady. Let him find peace even if it is not with me. Let my sacrifice not be in vain. And somewhere beyond the stars, the gods listened, and smiled upon her heart of silence. The seasons changed many times in the village of Tambura. The rains came and went, the fields turned green and golden again, and life went on as if nothing had ever been different. Cato had married another woman just as he said he would. Her name was Nia. She was young, strong and full of laughter. But no matter how much she smiled, the house never felt the same. Amina stayed quiet, keeping her heart calm. She shared her days between prayer, work and silence. She treated Nia with kindness and never let bitterness touch her tongue. People often wondered how she could remain so gentle. But Amina carried something deeper than pain. She carried peace. Years later, the whispers in the village began again, but this time they were about Cato. He had fallen sick. At first it was only a cough. Then it grew worse. His strength began to fade and his once bright eyes grew dim. The healers tried herbs and chants, but nothing worked. His new wife, Nia, cared for him with fear and confusion, but she was young and did not understand the quiet patience sickness required. When word reached Amina, she came to his side without hesitation. The moment she stepped into the hut, the air seemed to change. She brought cool water, clean cloths and soft food. She sat beside his mat and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Cato looked at her weakly. "Amina," he whispered. "Why are you here? You owe me nothing." She smiled softly. "When love is true, it never owes. It only gives." He tried to speak, but his voice broke into a cough. Amina held his hand and said nothing more. She stayed by his side through the long nights when he could not sleep and the long days when pain made him groan. She sang old songs, the ones they used to sing under the moon when they were young. The villagers began to notice. "Look at her," they said. "Even after all he did, she still stays." Some said she was a fool. Others said she was a saint. But Amina did not hear them. She only listened to the slow, tired breath of the man she once called her heart. One morning, as the sun rose and the air turned warm, Mama Lela came to visit. The old priestess walked slowly, leaning on her stick. Her eyes were full of years and secrets. When she entered the hut, Amina bowed her head respectfully. "Mama," Amina whispered, "he is getting weaker." Mama Lela nodded. "The gods are calling him home." Amina looked down. "Then let me be here when they do." Cato stirred, his voice faint. "Mama Lela, is that you?" "Yes, my son," the priestess said. "It is I." He tried to smile but failed. "Tell me, did the gods ever forgive me?" Mama Lela looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to Amina, who sat quietly, her eyes wet but calm. The old woman sighed. "There is something you must know before you go to the ancestors, Cato." Amina looked up suddenly, fear in her eyes. "Mama," she began, but Mama Lela raised her hand. "No, child. The time of silence is over. Every secret has its season. This one season has come." Cato looked confused. "What do you mean?" Mama Lela stepped closer and placed her hand on his chest. "Many years ago, when you lay dying from the snake's bite, Amina came to me. She begged the gods to save your life. But life must be paid for with life." Cato's eyes widened, his breath catching. The old priestess continued, her voice slow and heavy. "The gods said, to give you life she must give the womb that brings life. And she agreed. That night you lived. But she lost her chance to ever bear a child." The room grew silent. Even the wind outside seemed to stop. Cato stared at Amina, his eyes filling with tears. You gave your womb? For me?" Amina looked at him gently. "It was never a question, Cato. It was love." He tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. Tears ran down his cheeks. "All these years, I thought you were barren. I blamed you. I hurt you." Amina shook her head. "No, my love. You gave me a reason to live. That was enough." Cato reached for her hand. His voice trembled. "You gave everything for me and I gave you pain in return. How can I ever make that right?" She smiled faintly, her eyes soft and warm. "Love doesn't always shout, Cato. Sometimes it just stays." He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, not as the woman who could not bear children, but as the woman who had carried his soul. "Amina," he whispered, "forgive me." Her fingers brushed his cheek. "You were already forgiven the day you lived." Mama Lela turned away, tears glistening in her old eyes. The fire in the corner crackled softly. The smell of herbs filled the air. Outside, the sun was sinking behind the hills, painting the sky with gold and red. Cato's breathing slowed. His hand in Amina's grew still. A peaceful silence filled the hut. Mama Lela whispered a prayer. "The gods welcome another heart home." Amina sat beside him long after his breath had stopped. She did not cry loudly or wail like the other women would. She only sat quietly, her head bowed, whispering the same prayer she had said years ago, the one she said when she gave up her womb. That night, the villagers came to the hut when they heard the news. They found Amina sitting beside Cato, her face calm, her hands folded over his. She looked like a woman who had waited for peace and finally found it. A few days later, Amina herself fell ill. The healers said it was grief. She grew weaker with each sunrise. Mama Lela came to her side again and said softly, "The gods are kind. They do not leave love alone for long." Amina smiled faintly. "Then I will see him again soon." When she closed her eyes for the last time, the sky outside was clear, and the air smelled of rain. The villagers wept. They buried her beside Cato, under the big baobab tree near the river. For many years after that, people told her story. Mothers told their daughters about the woman who gave life through loss. Men told their sons about the wife who loved without measure. Children grew up hearing her name, Amina, the woman with the heart of the gods. And on quiet nights, when the wind moved through the trees, the villagers said you could still hear her voice, soft and full of love, whispering, "True love does not need to be seen. It only needs to stay.